Alrighty, boys and girls, the time is finally here. I want to test out whether or not I can build out a real-world application using the brand new SwiftUI framework that just came out 2 or 3 days ago. So don't be surprised if I'm a little rough around the edges, but I want to see how fast I can build out a typical AppStore app that you can find in 2019. So without further ado, I want to give you a very quick demo inside of Xcode 11. Right over here on the right side, you see this is my project and this is the preview for said project. I'm going to hit the play button right here that allows me to interact with this fake simulator. You can drag this app up and down. You can see this is a application that's very similar to, something like Facebook. This view up here, this header, you can swipe left and right. And in addition to that, you can also click into it to go into the detail groups view for any of these trending groups right here. Nice, cute little puppy. And finally, clicking into the secrets to seasonal gardening shows that page as well. And down below, we have all of these posts that belong to each of these users. For example, Bill Clinton has some interesting text for the actual post, the image for this user, and also the large post image right here. So how can we actually go about building out something this complex and complicated? Well, it's surprisingly pretty easy from my experience over the past 2 days. And I want to show you exactly how to build this out in today's video. Might take a little long, and I'm not sure if I can get to this top section. If I don't have enough time, I'll get to it in the next video. Okay, the first thing I want to do before we launch into a new project is to just build this and run inside of this little guy in the corner, the iPhone XR. And I'll be using this as the reference project for today's video. Okay, hopefully that sounds good. Seems like a pretty good start for today's lesson. I want to create a brand new project. I'm using, again, Xcode. Let's see, 11, single view app, click SwiftUI. Let's say FB and groups, SwiftUI. Create this, somewhere on your nice little laptop right here. I'm using my MacBook Pro from 2013, so I do apologize if it's a little bit slow here. I don't really like this top right inspector, so I'll just close that. We are going to be working in this content view file. Hit the resume, and you'll see a quick preview showing up, presenting the text of hello world, just like so. You can minimize and play around with this guy. I feel like the trackpad allows you to swipe up and down. So good stuff so far. Before I type any code, I want to just open up the assets and import the assets I'll be needing. So quickly here, I just want to take these guys, and these are just the images that you saw in the demo app right here. I'm also going to shrink the editor to a little bit smaller so that we can see the application there. And now I feel like I'm ready to kind of bang out some lines of code. All right, this is very, very large and scary. Okay, now you might be looking at this app right here, and you might be asking, well, how do I go about building out something like this, right? Well, this application is nothing more complicated than just a single list that has a header at the very top. If you want to learn more about how to build out a list in more slower detail, you can watch the previous lesson on this channel, but I'll be going over this stuff a little bit faster in today's video because this is a pretty complicated view and I don't want to waste too much time. So let's get started with the content view of Hello World. And the first thing I'll do is I'll say navigation view and use brace for this container, put a list inside of here, brace, and let's say text, and then this will just say first row. And I think that's all I need to start rendering out something inside of this view here. Can I zoom in a little bit? Okay, there you go. Looking good, looking good. Next thing I'll do is navigation. See, navigation bar title. And I believe this is like a text and that, and let's say groups right there. Hopefully that's gonna work, and we have groups. I feel like I want to close out of that to give you a little bit more space to look at the application there. Sometimes the autocomplete doesn't work, but you just have to make sure to remember the syntax, which I find a little bit difficult, especially right now when the framework is all new. We have the text first row, and that's kind of how this works. So, just paste this, paste that. You'll get a couple of more rows to show up inside of our view here. Not exactly sure what happened to that groups, but I think it might come back after a re-render. So this looks okay. Let me just remove these guys here and maybe the group will come back. Okay, so instead of using this list like this, what I want to do is I want to start introducing some, dynamic rows for my actual list view. So what I'll do is I'm going to say let post, and let's say equals a string array of 1, and let's say comma 2, comma 3. All right, so these are my 3 posts that I'll eventually turn into this right here, 0, 1, and 2. And the way I'm going to do that is to iterate on this post array with a for each loop like that. And you have to say, let's see, post.identified by, and I think you can say .self. I believe that's how it works. And inside of here, you can just use a text, and you can either use $0 for the particular post object in here. And let's hit the resume. I think this should run. I don't see any problems with this so far. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And if you click it, you can see it actually highlights the particular code in Xcode. Okay, that looks pretty nice. This $0 I find a little bit difficult to work with. So you can actually say post and in like that. And when you specify the post, you have to use it inside of here. So this is how you create a dynamic list. You can just add in more objects here if you wanted to do so. I'll demonstrate that and run this. I believe it's Command, Option, and P to resume. And you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 now. So this is typically how you build out a vertical list inside of SwiftUI. Next thing you want to learn how to do is to mock up this trending portion up here for these groups. Not too hard if you use something called a scroll view. Okay, so let me just do this really quickly here. Inside of this guy, you can say text, and let's say trending, and let's see what we get using this view here. That needs to be a string, and I believe this is going to render out. So we see trending up here. So this is basically how it's going to work. I feel like I can use another text down here. I'm not sure if this is going to render out. So you see trending is being cut off and it's being clipped by the actual bounds of the scroll view. What you can do is you can just change the height of this whole trending area. So let me show you how this works by using a height of, let's say 150 for now. And as you can see, the 150 has changed it to be this tall. So that's basically how we're going to render out this top portion. The next thing we need is, instead of this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this right here. I'm going to use an H stack. So H stack, brace, brace. And let's say, let's see, text right here, group 1. And I'm going to copy this a couple of more times here. So the H stack is going to line up all these elements on the right, somewhere right here. It's going to build and it's just going to wait to render out. So this is group 1, 1, 1. And you can just copy this a couple of more times to see the effect of what's going to go on. You see everything is being stretched in the center-ish area. For this H stack, I feel like it's not the best way of doing this. So what I'll do is, for the scroll view, I'm going to use a V stack, and I'm going to put everything inside of this top section inside of a V stack instead of, letting it be the child of the scroll view. I feel like this is a better way of doing it. Okay, so the groups is coming back and everything is kind of like centered in this section here. So let me try to drag this around. And will you work? There we go. That's not what you want, and you want everything aligned to the leading edge. So stack view, and let's say alignment and leading is what you want. This should fix the problem right here, and you see trending is now back on the left side. So this is typically how you build out your application. You just start mocking up these widgets here, and then you slowly fill out the UI and also the data that needs to support the UI. So this is the basic foundation for this application here. And now, what do we want to do? Well, there's a lot of different ways of building out this entire application. I'll work on these post views first. So for example, this row 1 right here, I want to transform it into this guy. And this is pretty easy if you go down to here. So this is my post, let's see, post rows, this for each loop here. And the way I'm going to transform these rows, so let me just shrink this down to maybe 100, will look a little better. Okay, so this is row 1. I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to say PostView. And the PostView, I'll define it as another widget. This way the code is a little bit cleaner. Struct PostView, let it conform to view, var body, and some view. This guy will be text. Let's see, PostView here. And now what I'll do is I'll remove that. And inside of this loop, we are going to iterate over all of the post objects. And because we have 5 or 6 of them, it's going to render out these 6 post view objects here. And now I have a pretty, clean location in the code where I can start introducing this entire view here from Bill Clinton all the way down to this bottom edge. The way that I am going to try to do that is for this text right here, I'm just going to say, let's see, this, I'm going to transform this into the username, so username. And then next, I'm going to have the post body text that will hopefully support AutoSizing vertically and span multiple lines. All right, so that's the idea. Hopefully this is going to update soon. You can't actually do this because a view can only take one container, so use a vstack. This is going to look like this, and we should be okay. That's going to reset, and I want to align everything on the left edge like how we did previously. So let's use alignment yet again. Dot leading is what I need, and all of this is going to be pushed off to the left. You can see making applications in SwiftUI is, I think, a lot faster than code and also storyboard. So this is kind of my new preferred way of doing things. Last thing I need is the image all the way at the bottom here. It's very easy to render out these images. Just use image, and I'm going to use the post puppy. So post puppy. Hopefully that's going to draw something out, and that looks pretty good. Next thing we want to do is for all these elements here, I want to push it to the left edge here, and I don't want to see this space. I don't know exactly if there's a better way of doing that, but what I figured is to use the padding leading of -20, so comma and -20. Really confusing how to specify that, but basically 20 will push it flush to the left edge here. Okay, now what I want to do is maybe I want to change this to be the font of let's see, headline, and this is going to change the username font, and that should be okay. All right, this text right here, I think I wanted to say line limit of nil. I think that should get some auto-sizing of the text, but that's not working just yet. Next thing I want to do is, you see how we have this image view here in the circle and then the username. I'm going to transform this top section with just the username, and I'm going to take it and put it inside of an H stack, and you'll see why in just a moment. So that and that maybe. This is going to render out 3 horizontal usernames right there on the left edge. And now what I want to do is I want to remove one of them, and then on the left one right here, I want to transform this left username into an actual image. So why don't I show you how to do that using image, and let's say burger. So these are just the assets that I have imported in the very beginning of the video. That's the burger right here. This guy, it doesn't look that great because it's so large. You can specify a frame of width, let's say 70, and height of 70. That's going to give you a perfect square for this burger image. But you see, something's wrong, right? And you can't really tell what's wrong because the code is very difficult to read. So let me just clip off the actual image, and it's basically going to clip it to this size right here. I feel like 70 is a little bit large, so let's bring this down to 60. See what this guy changes to, and that looks pretty solid. Whenever I'm introducing these dot syntaxes, I like to align it on the left edge like that. I feel like Apple does the same thing. If you want to transform the image here into a circle, it's pretty easy in Swift. You can say first you want to clip it, but not exactly clip it. Let's see, I actually want to make this resizable. I don't like how the hamburger is so large. The actual image is actually just this, so just say resizable. And it's going to transform this image into the actual entire image because it's resizing it down to 60 by 60. So that's kind of how you get this image to look better. Next thing you might want to do is to clip it using a shape. So I believe it's clip shape and circle. Hopefully I can spell this out correctly. And I feel like that should be closer to what I want. So that's a circle with the clip shape, and it looks all right. Now, last thing I want to do is to maybe give it padding on the left edge. So the H stack contains all of this stuff now. And let's say padding and leading, and this guy, we'll give it a value of 16 maybe. So that looks good, looks good. Next, maybe we can say, let's see, padding. So padding and top of also 16. And that'll give a lot of space on the top of this image and username. You see on the right side, we have this posted 8 hours ago right underneath the username here. So this guy really is going to be the user's name. So let's say Bill Clinton for now, good old President Bill. This maybe you want to say, let's see, I'm going to wrap the username inside of a VStack, and let's say that, and then that. And that's going to allow us to modify another bit of text called posted 8 hours ago. Posted, and let's say 8 hours ago. This, you might want to use a subheadline. Not exactly sure what this font's going to render out, but it gives us that effect. By default, all of these VStacks are centered, aligned. So obviously you want to change this to the alignment of leading. Don't ask me how I know about how to do all this, but I used to have a library that stacked everything just like this using the alignment. So it's very similar to what I used to build out in the past. Last thing I might want to do is to provide some spacing for this if you wanted to space it out more. So these two labels are here. You are going to introduce some spacing here. I'm going to say padding, and let's say leading, and maybe 8 is a value I want to use. So this is going to give it this space right here. Okay, that is how we render out these post objects. For the auto sizing of the post body text, you see how it's kind of at the right edge here. I feel like this is very hard to actually get working. And the way I'm going to do this is to say padding, let's say padding right here, and we are going to use a value of leading, and let's say 16. So I find that the line limit nil only works when you specify a leading padding. So make sure you're aware of that. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You might want to specify some padding of, let's say, trailing of, I don't know, 32 maybe. Maybe that's a little bit too large. That's going to make this guy squeeze over to the left edge here. If you want to introduce spacing for all of these elements, you can do that for the original VStack. So VStack is this entire component. You can say spacing, and let's use a value of 8 just to push everything out a little bit more. So maybe this is a 16 or maybe 12. So maybe 16 is a little bit better. Okay, so 16 looks good to me. I'm just eyeballing the spacing here. And so far, this looks pretty good. Last thing you might want to do is, I can't really get rid of these horizontal separator lines right here, which is really, really annoying. One hack that I find that can work is use a padding of bottom of -8. It'll push everything down a little bit more, and you can no longer see that separator line. It's a hack. I don't recommend doing this in production, but that seems to work for me so far. Last thing we want to do is, you don't exactly want to just only support this dummy data of Bill Clinton with this puppy, right? You might want to support different images for the post and also a different username. The way to do that is for your post array right here, instead of just this dummy text, you can define a struct called post. And I'm just going to do this. I'm going to define this with an integer, let's see, ID integer like that. I'll show you why I need that in just a moment. First thing I'll do is I'll just define username, and we'll say, let's see, the actual post text. Let's say the image name for the actual image in the wide puppy there. And then I think I should be okay. Let's define these as string objects, and we are good. So now that I have this post object, I can define my post like this instead. Define it as an array of post objects. Inside of this array, I'm going to use a init ID of 0. This we will call, let's say, Hillary Clinton. I think I need a double quote here. Okay, so that. And it'll say good old Bill up to his usual ways and dirty tricks. Okay, so that looks good. The image name, I'm going to use a burger now. All right, now that I have this array as a, let's see, a list of post objects here, this code is no longer going to work because you can't have a for each using the post identified by self. That's not going to work. And if you type out the auto completion code, you'll see what's available, so identified, and you want to type in this / and dot. It'll bring up all the properties here. You just want to select the property that's going to identify that particular object, and that's going to be ID. You do have to be careful about this, otherwise it doesn't work. So once you do this, you can actually pass in this post object into this post view somehow. So what exactly do I mean? Well, this post view, it doesn't have access to the post objects inside of your array, right? So let's say I do this and copy that one more time. What I can do is I can declare some kind of object on the post, and let's just call it post like that. Once you define this right here, you have to declare your post view object with that particular post. And this is very similar to dependency injection. Take the post from the actual iteration loop here. And once you do that, you can supply these objects here. So this is the image right here. Let's look at the username. So Bill Clinton. Once I change this, it's going to look like Hillary Clinton. So post.username comes from that object here. And once I hit resume, you'll see that being changed to Hillary Clinton, hopefully. So here we go, Hillary from Bill. Next thing is for the bottom image, which is this guy, the post puppy. You can also change this to come from the actual post object. So just post image name, and that's going to change right there for you. Okay, so that looks okay. I feel like this is looking a little bit weird because it doesn't span all the way to the edges. So what you can do is for this image right here, you can also say, I think it's resizable like that maybe. Let's kind of see what that does for us. And it turns really, really thin like that. One thing that you can also do is to give this image a frame of height. So I'm going to give it a static height of, let's say 300. And that's going to make it look like that. So I feel like these images are very difficult to work with. You can say scaled to fill to see if that actually does anything. And that kind of looks like that. So I'm going to clip this as well. Dot clipped. So clipped. And I think I might want to take away one of these right here. So let's take away resizable. And that should be somewhat better. Okay, so spending a couple of minutes and playing around with the settings here, I feel like this is the code that I actually want. But in order for this image to span left to right, I actually need a bigger asset. So I'm going to go inside of the assets here, click into that. And for the burger, I'm just going to slide it to the 1x and go back right here. And let's hit resume, close out of the left side again. And hopefully the image should span fully. Okay, this looks a lot better here. And now I can hit the play button and try to run this again, and hopefully nothing crashes. All right, so I'll bring back my simulator on the top right corner, and now I believe I can interact with the actual application. Stop and play and make sure this is all good. So drag up, resume obviously, and everything should be okay once this guy gets up and running again. So hit that and play, and wait for the preview spinner to go. And after a while, it should be done, and now you can drag up. All right, so one thing about the actual code here, and the reason why you're seeing the burger twice, even though we have post puppy, is because of the ID here. You want to make sure that the ID is actually different for each one of your post rows. And the reason why that is because if you have the same ID, then for the for each loop right here inside of your list, it's going to use the same row for each of these objects. And you just have to be very, very careful of that fact. All right, so last thing I want to do for today's video is to show you how to render out the trending groups at the very top of our app. So currently we have group 1, 1, 1, and obviously we don't want just this. So the easiest way of doing the actual rendering of these groups is to transform this text element here. We just want to transform it into a VStack, and let's say VStack, get the autocomplete. I am going to introduce a couple of different groups. So let me just remove all of those guys. and put that in here. This is the group 1. You should see that right here. I'm going to stack an image right above it. And let me call this image the hike. I believe that's my hiking image that you see right here. And that's what it looks like. It is a little bit squeezed. So for the entire scroll view that's at the top above these posts, we are going to modify that to be 150, and that's already looking better. So 180, and now the group name is showing up. Now notice how the group 1 isn't aligned to the left edge, kind of like what you're seeing on this co-ed on the left. So for the VStack, you simply want to say alignment and spell that correctly, of course, alignment, and dot leading is what you want. And that'll take the group 1 to the left side like so. This, you want to type out something else. So let's say co-ed hikes of Colorado. So Colorado. And the next thing you want to do is for this VStack, we actually want to clip it on the right edge. So currently it has a height of 180, and maybe I'll clip this guy using a frame of maybe the width, let's see, 120. Let's see what that gives us. And that'll make this text right here truncate. So that's kind of okay. I guess I will say a line limit of 0 to make sure the actual line spans multiple lines. I think maybe I can zoom in just a little bit more to see what's going on here. So that is looking okay. Maybe I'll specify a bigger height of, let's say, 200. And that's kind of what we see right now. I feel like this guy needs some kind of padding, and I feel like the padding value is always the one that actually matters. I'm not exactly sure why. So let's say 8, say 0. So that's what that does. The VStack is the padding of, let's see, leading, and let's see, dot leading. Get something to come up, and 0. Okay, so the padding doesn't look like it's working. Maybe the height of this guy needs to be changed. So height and 180 maybe. That looks okay. All right, so making sure that you give the actual stack a proper height is what you need. So let's remove these padding values for now. And this guy, maybe it's a little bit tall, so let's bring you down to 150 or 170. Okay, so 170 looks okay. And now what I can do is I can start taking this entire view and kind of duplicating it, right? So this is the VStack inside of the HStack. I'm going to do that. That'll give me a second row right there. And I feel like the width is a little bit tall, so let's say 110, and that looks better. Okay, so this also needs to be 110. And you obviously don't want to copy and paste this, all of these rows right here for the actual HStack. You can transform this into a view itself. So let me show you what I mean. Let me just take that and I'll remove the copies. And inside of here, let's call this the group view. And I will define my group view right below. So struct group view, let it be of type view. And then this has a var body, some view, and just paste that in there. You should be all right. And here's my group view. So paste and paste, and I think I'll be fine. Let's try again and run. Hopefully no errors, build succeeded, and we have our group right here. Now for each of these images, you can apply a corner radius, I believe. So corner radius of, let's say 5, and that'll clip the edges on the corner there. Maybe I'll give it a value of 12 to make it a little bit more obvious what's going on. So that's how the corner radius is applied. And now if you apply more groups right here, you can kind of do the same thing. So group, and what you'll see is as you slide over to the left, you'll get this entire thing to slide, which isn't exactly what you want. So what can I do right here? Well, I think I want to take this trending and I want to do something like this. So VStack is what I want. Let me say text trending, and I'll grab this entire thing and I'll paste that right here. I believe that should be okay. And let's see, this is going to need the alignment. So alignment of dot leading. All right, hopefully that's all I want to do. So this guy now slides over to the left and right. It's not exactly perfect because you don't exactly want this side to be clipped off by this over here. You're going to need to apply some very, very tedious padding settings, and maybe I'll show you what the code is at the very end of the project. And so the very last thing I want to show you how to build out in today's lesson is the ability to click on one of these guys and then take your user into a different view. So for example, clicking into this right now, it doesn't do anything. And to actually transition yourself into a separate view is very easy. You just simply want to take this H stack here. And for each one of your group views, let's take the first one, for example, you want to wrap this in a navigation button. This guy comes with a couple of constructors. Let's use the destination and the label here. So just hit enter. I'm going to take the group view and paste it in here. The destination is actually the view that you want to transition into. So I'm just going to create a new object here. And let's say my group detail view, let it be a view. And inside of this guy, we are going to say var body some view. Let's make sure that we can say, let's see, text is here and group detail view. All right, I'm going to take this, and for the destination, we are going to say delete, do that and that, create a new group detail view as the destination. And once you have this, you should be okay to go. I'm going to run this. The navigation button, one thing that it does is you can click on it, but as you can see, it is rendered out in this blue color, this blue tint color. And the reason why that's happening is because for the group view, it takes all of this stuff and puts it inside of a button. And by default, the button has a blue tint color over it. So I believe you can say rendering modes or rendering mode and dot original is, I believe, what you want. So what is this code here? Maybe it is on the image, and that's what you need. So the ordering in which you apply these methods do matter, so be very, very careful about that. Last thing is for the text, you might want to give this guy some color. So color.primary, and that's just going to turn this into the black right here. So now you can click this and bring it into this group detail view. Obviously, you are going to have to link up the correct information as you tap into this. The way to do that is to make sure that instead of using these dummy group views here, you want to iterate over an array of groups. And then for the H stack, you want to apply a for each here. So use a for each on a groups array. And then for the actual iteration, provide the navigation buttons using that loop. Alrighty, everybody, that's gonna be it for today's very, very, very long video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you learned how to use the brand new SwiftUI framework to build out an application that's fairly complex, right? If you want to download the source code for the completed version of the project, I'll include it in the links in the description below. If you enjoy what I do on this channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.